We Chose Play, Raising an Autistic Child to Thrive and Feel Understood. My new book is now available for purchase at your preferred online bookseller. Learn more at affectautism.com/wechoseplay, all one word. Affect Autism, in its 10th year of providing free, supportive content for your DIR journey.
All of Affect Autism's podcasts are produced and edited by Daria Brown. Please note that the views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved, do not constitute educational or medical advice, do not necessarily reflect the views of Affect Autism, Daria Brown, nor ICDL and associated parties. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with their individual circumstances for specific support.
You're listening to Autistic Moms Chatting, a We Chose Play podcast from affectautism.com. Let me introduce you to our guests. Dr. Angela Kingdon is an American late-diagnosed autistic mother of a young adult son who's currently in college in the United States. She now lives in England and hosts the Autistic Culture podcast, my latest new favorite podcast that I listen to religiously. And Dr. Kingdon started her career as a ghostwriter in 1994. She's provided authors with book strategy, accountability coaching, self-publishing, and marketing services, as well as helping people who want to publish traditionally to find a literary agent and get a book deal. For over 30 years, she's been doing this. She's worked on over 2,000 books and helped authors sell over 50 million combined books. She now focuses on working with other autistic people on books about their interests, autism memoirs, and their professional work. She also works with a very select neurotypical population who have expertise in affirming care for the neurodivergent population. And she also, I heard her say on her latest podcast, reads about 30 books a month. Welcome, Angela.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
And I also have Michelle Rose, who is a late diagnosed autistic mother of 3 autistic children in Chester, England. Her husband is Kieran Rose, the autistic advocate who I've had on the podcast many times. Michelle spent a dozen years mentoring and training thousands of small business owners to get started with the basics of their marketing via online marketing courses and mentoring in her own unique, friendly, and creative way of thinking about marketing. She homeschools 2 of her 3 children. Welcome, Michelle. It's so nice to have you.
It's lovely to be here.
Kieran really is the person who kind of put on the radar that I might be neurodivergent. Angela, people like us are not considered autistic, which I now know when I listen to the Autistic Culture podcast. I found my people. You know, a lot of people still think that autistic identity is very different from autistic diagnosis, and that autistic diagnosis should be left to those who have disabilities and high needs. And of course, I can refer back in the blog post to my podcast with Kieran, where he talks about functioning labels and the, why we don't use them. And especially a lot of people that have been in the field for years and are quote unquote autism experts because they've worked with autistic populations, but they still have that medical model mindset. And I really see since COVID that shifting so much. And only after hearing all these podcasts come up during COVID with middle-aged women talking about being diagnosed autistic and going, I'm like that. Wait a second. I do that. Wait a second. And Kieran said that he thinks that I'm probably neurodivergent. And according to Kieran, he's like, yes, that's because you didn't realize. Autistic Masking book. For anyone that heard my podcast with Dr. Amy Pearson and Kieran about the book, I was like, I'm going to be emailing you detailed feedback about the book. I still haven't made my way through it. I'm the worst. Like,
does that mean Kieran, you haven't gotten the ADHD diagnosis too?
The ADHD questionnaires are not me so much yet. Dr. Amy Pearson said, I don't know about that.
Well, so here's a really interesting, getting back to our kids a little. So my son is ADHD. When he was like age appropriate, I don't know, maybe first grade or second grade. So 7 or 8 years old, Michelle, I got the call from the school that was like, your kid has sensory differences. We would like him evaluated. Like, this is how it's supposed to go. The right people caught him at the right time. And he went through all of the evaluations. And I think he was diagnosed when he was, I want to say 7 or 8, somewhere around there.
So pretty late.
Which is, I think for ADHD, probably.
Oh, okay. For ADHD. Okay.
Not diagnosed as autistic.
Oh, okay.
Diagnosed as ADHD, and at the time, which sounded right and came at the right age and all those things. And at the time of his diagnosis, he was also given a diagnosis of anxiety. And he really, really struggled with many, many anxiety related things. Then fast forward 10 years later, he's now at the University of Miami and got straight A's this year. He has a lot of accommodations that he's had since third grade. And he wanted those accommodations, tests, extra test time, being able to take tests alone, a note taker. He's got dyspraxia, stuff like that. The University of Miami required that he get retested.
Yeah.
Bureaucracies are unpleasant machines. So we went and got retested. And as you know, Matt Lowry does evaluations, who was my podcast co-host for the first 3 seasons. And so we went to get diagnosed by Matt, and we literally had like a weekend. We like flew to Kentucky. We spent a day with Matt at their trail house, which is their facility out there. I recommend this to anyone. Like, Matt's diagnosis is amazing. And he did a lot of the same tests, the PI, the PAI, the ADOS, like a lot of the same tests Jesse had done when he was 8. And I had all those old records. And he pulled them up, and Jesse's test results were almost the same. Like, very little had changed. But what Matt said is between 2011, I think, is when his original evaluation was, and then 2023 or whatever, when we did the other one, the newer one, there has been so much learned about autism and ADHD that he's like, what looked then in 2012 or whatever as ADHD and anxiety, that is a perfect ADHD profile. So he diagnosed Jesse as autistic, and that filled in so many more gaps for me, because he was very clear about his ADHD. We always knew he was neurodivergent. I can talk to you about many parenting things that have come out of that. We also homeschooled, all the things. But when I got the autism diagnosis, I was like, that's when it clicked for me. And this is what I want you to think about too, is that it's not, in my experience as a mom, it's not ADHD plus autism. It's not like it's not like you have brown eyes and you're 5'5". Like, it's not 2 separate independent variables. ADHD is a completely different diagnosis. I don't think you have an ADHD profile, but I will tell you from talking to you, you have an ADHD profile like I have never seen. I mean, you are right on the nose ADHD. And some people talk about like Jesse has whatever, there's inattentive, I forget all the different ADHD types, hyperactive. Jesse's not hyperactive. He's not really inattentive either. Like, tell that to his anxiety. So the way they explained it to me was like, oh, he's ADHD, but because he has so much anxiety, they didn't use the word hyper focus, but he was hyper focused on safety. There was no inattentive. There was no hyperactive. Right. He's ADHD. It's a third profile. I don't know what you think about that, Michelle, but I experience ADHD people totally different.
Well, I mean, even just a few years ago, here, it was you got one diagnosis or the other. And, you know, so it's been like in the UK, you were one or the other. And then that evolution of people realizing, oh, well, if you're autistic, you can also be ADHD. You know, it wasn't a person as a silo. We weren't one or the other. Listening into a lot of what Kieran works on and the conversations he has, or, you know, when I'm editing talks like this, he had a really interesting conversation with Dr. Monique Botha, a UK researcher and academic over here. And they had this conversation about, you know, that they're 2 sides of the same coin. It's one brain that's really, you know, is born one way, has had a lot of trauma. It's the way we differently experience things depending on who we are, where we're brought up, our family, our culture, you know, all those intersectionalities. But Monique had this beautiful way of describing, like, you might sort of feel more, you would be identify as autistic and ADHD, but you might, and this could change the week, the month, the year. I think we talked a bit about sort of being women who, you know, are sort of menopausal as well. So this could all change depending on where you are just in sort of your life cycle, as to whether at any point in your life you're more ADHD forward or sometimes you're more autism forward. And again, and that wouldn't be set in stone. That's where you are in your life, what's happening to you, what you're going through. And that would be, I guess, for us, the way when we say the ADHD, we keep coming back to that they are two sides of the same coin. One thing, one diagnosis, will it change? Will it become that? But because I think we meet and work with so many amazing people who have facets of both. There's too many people that we meet who we think, if you don't know it, you're probably autistic, and yeah, there's definitely ADHD stuff there too. That they cross over so much. Sort of two sides of the same kind of brain that processes differently. How hubristic is it that we really feel like we can label people into very narrow boxes and slots? Our brains are magnificent. We know so little about our brains. Do we know more about the moon or the bottom of the ocean? And yet we're trying to box us in and label us. And so I think there's definitely something in that, Angela, about what you said about, you see one experience, one way of being, and then you start to recognize another, and you just realize that us and our kids were complex and amazing and unique, and it can come with all sorts of challenges. But on the whole, like, I know we're here to sort of chat about parenting, but would we change our kids? And for me, to start off, that would be a definite, like, no. So my nickname, with even the kids call me this, is, so Kieran calls me Shelley, shortened for Michelle, but my nickname is Half a Job Shelley, because it just, something gets started and it does not get finished. So,
okay, so this is interesting because she basically said to me, did you have a hard time sitting still in school? She's like, you never would have got picked up in school. But when I was podcasting with Kieran, we joked, because I suddenly had this realization. My mom was a very overprotective mom. I realize now that was my executive functioning. And Kieran joked, he's like, yeah, if it wasn't for your mom, you'd be and he used some British terminology. He's like, you'd be a blob on the floor. Whatever he said, like, sounded very British. It was very funny. We both started laughing. And I never thought about that before. Like, if not for my mom going,
like, your mom was doing a lot of
you're late. Right. Like, I was late for everything. I'm like, always, oh, look, a cow. Oh, look at this. Like, that's me all the time. But yet, hyper focused to the max. Like, I could sit and do things forever. And I definitely have 8 billion unfinished things, but I also like to finish things. So who knows? But I would really love to hear. I really want. I mean, honestly, I could talk about this with both of you for years,
and we will.
Like I said, I just got access to Angela's book. Tell us the name of it.
It's Am I Actually Autistic? And it's a guide to processing the identity shock of a late in life diagnosis.
Okay, good so question. For me, it wasn't much of a shock. I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. My son's personality is exactly like mine. Like, doesn't surprise me. It explains so many things why I was different. But working through this book, and now, I became a paid subscriber of the Autistic Culture podcast. I have access to Angela's book. I'm going to be making
Which is
my
why
way through
she's
that.
saying that, because the book actually isn't out yet, but I have an early edition out just for our subscribers. So the book will come out in September. But if you want a sneak peak, you pay $8 and you can get an early look. So there you go. Thank you.
$12 Canadian, but it's still good.
And I think it's like 16 Australian. I looked it up the other day and I was like so alarmed. I don't know what's happening with all the currency.
I found this out because I just wrote a book about using the DIR floor time approach. Okay, so this podcast is not about DIR floor time, but I do want to plug in there that one of the things that attracted me to DIR floor time, it has always, even back in its origination, which was definitely more medical model than it is now, but Dr. Greenspan was a psychiatrist, and in his time, he was so forward thinking. He was always strengths-based and individual differences. That's the main focus, really, is like the D, the I, the R. Where is the child developmentally on this trajectory of human development, which will look different in autistics and will look different in each person, because we have our individual differences. And how do we meet them where they're at, connect with them and follow their interests and look at their strengths and look at their profile, and then build that relationship and that connection. Everything we learn in life is through relationships. That really attracted me to the floor time approach when everything getting shoved at us was ABA behavioral interventions. And I just didn't like that, forcing my child to sit at a table with a seatbelt and showing him cue cards. I want that intrinsic learning and the intrinsic motivation using affect, which is why my site's called Affect Autism. Greenspan wrote that book with Dr. Stuart Shanker, the first idea about how the evolution of the mind and everything. They postulated that it's this emotion is the big component. And if I show great interest and exaggerate my gestures and expressions, all of a sudden my son is pulled into an interaction where I'm following his interest, I'm following his lead, and then we can get these circles of communication going. It doesn't have to be verbal. In fact, in human babies, it's nonverbal and gestural before they speak. And getting him to a place to move through these developmental capacities where he has the capacity to really think for himself and really be able to make decisions and advocate and have autonomy and all of these things. And it's so convoluted with the way autistics are brought up, because the way they've been brought up is just being compliant and being forced to be compliant. The approach is play-based, strengths-based. It really helped me figure out how to best support my child. And so getting back to why I brought that up, I had to price the book, and they suggest to do it automatically. And I went in and I looked at all the currencies, and I'm like, no, I'm making it $19.99 in the US. I'm going to make it $24.99 in Canada, and in Australia I'll make it $24.99 too.
Sorry, can I just say, like, listening to you tell a story is like listening to me tell a story that you hear and you want to get to hear, but you really feel like before you get to, you have to give all of the context and go around all of the houses, but then that strength and skill of bringing it back and making it land. But it is completely like listening to me tell a story.
Well, my brother will say to me, is this going to be one of your 2-minute stories that last 35 minutes? Like, can you please just get to the point?
Family.
I cannot tell it without giving the context of everything. Anyway, this is just a general kind of question just to lead, but what's the biggest learning experience in your parenting journey? I've heard Kieran talk a little bit about some stuff with your family, and I've heard you, Angela, talk about how when you got diagnosed, you tried to be neurotypical for, I think you said 10 years, and then you realized, oh, okay, I've been masking all the time. Anyway.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was talking about how yesterday I was speaking at I know Americans and Canadians, that doesn't sound long, but a 3-hour drive in England is like an outing. And so the day before, I blocked out my whole afternoon. And this is like a practice. And as a parent, it's like a thing, you try and like teach your kid things. Like I also try and model this. So I blocked off my whole afternoon, even though I wanted to do things on Sunday. I bought like, I don't know, marigolds, and I was going to plant them, but I had put on my calendar, like, you are instructed, and I like can't executive function. So I need my calendar to tell me what to do. You are instructed to lay on the couch and stare at your phone, nap, because I knew I would need the energy to speak. And then the whole day, I mean, my speech was an hour, right? The whole day I drove there, had to people. There was small fucking talk. And then when we got there, it was like 3 hours before I was on. And they had a quiet room. And like, I love Liverpool, and I would love to like walk around and take pictures with the Beatles and shit. But I forced myself to sit in the quiet room because I'm like, I need this energy. And also I fall all the time. I cannot explain like how much of my life is based around the fact I know I am likely to fall. And once I fall and hurt myself, I am not going to want to like speak. So like, I had very small heels on, but I didn't have flats on. I'm like, if I go walk around these cobblestone streets, I'm going to fall. Yeah. I know I'm going to fall. I can't be surprised now. It's been, 50 years of this. So I sat in the quiet room. I napped. Then I gave my speech, was great. And I had dinner. Our podcast producer lives in Liverpool. So he came out, we had dinner. Small talking, peopling, outside, the weather. I don't do the out of doors. There was sun in England. I know you don't believe it, but yesterday there was sun in England.
It was, yes.
And then by the time I got home, it was like 11 o'clock at night. And this whole day, it's 5:30 here now, but I blocked off the entire day. And until we started talking about an hour ago, but until 5 minutes before I got on this call with you, I was in bed. I was not dressed. I was in bed all day. And I have to block out a day before and after. I don't have to, but the cost is something's going to happen. I'm going to fall. I'm going to have a meltdown. I'm going to, I don't know, commit a crime. Like who knows?
Yeah.
And so that, I think, like, my son is, young and healthy and has all the energy. And when I tell him, like, hey, it's exam week, just do exams, like do nothing else, black eye, it's like, well, no, I can still go do things. I'm like, you can, but then the cost is going to be really high. I forget what happened for this round of exams, but there was one day, and it wasn't drinking. I accused him of drinking. I think it was more like a sinus infection, but he had an 8 o'clock exam the night before. He was out, he was sick, whatever. And I mean, he still got an A in the class, but that exam was so stressful. And that was at 8. And then there was another exam at 2, and he couldn't emotionally regulate. And like, it's nice, he's smart and he can mask and he can get through it. But there was a whole week then of exam recovery because the stress and the intensity of that. So I just think there's so much planning, especially if you are not good at executive functioning, which I'm not. Like, A, I need it on my calendar, and B, I need a person to remind me I put it on the calendar when I was in my right mind for a reason.
Yeah,
and it
but
just
how often is it in the calendar, but it's not? I say this all of the time to Kieran and the kids. We'll get somewhere and they're like, you're not meant to be here to an appointment. Like our youngest has physio, a different like appointment. Oh, you're not meant to be here till tomorrow, or you missed it. It was yesterday. And I'm like, but it was in
the calendar.
It was in the diary. What? And then I go and I'm like, no, it was in the diary in here, but I hadn't physically put it in the diary. And sometimes I just think, how did I get to 47 with a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old? And how are we all still alive?
Right.
Like, it's quite,
listen, I have that question impressive. All the time.
We all were late diagnosed. And it's an interesting, because in your case, Angela, your son was diagnosed after you, ADHD first, but then autism after. And then Michelle, I guess your kids, well, you knew about Kieran's diagnosis when you met him because he was 23 when he got diagnosed. And then I guess.
Yeah. How'd you get diagnosed, Michelle? I don't know your story.
Not yet. So, well, see, I have this, that it's there. And I look at the kids, and more and more and more I see me in the kids. This might resonate with other listeners, that when I have this debate with Kieran a lot. So I guess I would be classed as self-identified, yet to be diagnosed. And we debate backwards and forwards with Kieran. And I say, but Kieran, I can't, am I autistic? Am I not?
Oh, you need my book. That's who it's for.
So, I say such a good question, because there is trauma in my childhood. So the thing that I most identified with, and this is going back a long time, was when I read the criteria, and it wasn't sort of the medicalized criteria. Someone had written a beautiful blog post about complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. And oh my God, that resonated so. And I said to Kieran, this is me. But Kieran keeps coming back to, a little bit like we were talking before we went on air, Daria, about Kieran said, yes, Michelle, but before that trauma happened to you, you were a young autistic girl, preteen, who would never have been identified because I sat still in class, because I was top of the class, because I was compliant, and I have to really sometimes, to look at my parents and the rest of our family, and I think more and more I start to see, Kieran would say, in a family of 5, one diagnosed, dad diagnosed, 3 kids diagnosed. He's like, Michelle, what makes you the outlier? And he's like, look at our kids. I did not make them by myself. They are 50% you and they are 100% autistic. You know, and I'm like, yeah, I think maybe I did have something to do with that. So it even in our family, where so many of our conversations
Wow.
are dominated by autistic identity. Angela, the title of your book, which I have to go and read it because am I autistic? So even in our family, where our whole life is autism, the narrative, the identity, the work that we do, the reason we took 3 kids out of school because they weren't supported as autistic individuals and it was harming them. Still, even in our environment, I still wonder.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Wow.
I think I know at a core level, but I don't want to go to the doctors because that's when I know the invalidation will come.
Right. Right.
And I don't feel strong enough to deal with that, so that it's something that I'm really happy to hold close and identify with and love. But I cannot bear the thought of going through the diagnostic process here in the UK yet, because it's just, one, we don't have
For
the money
good reason.
to go private and find like the process you were talking about, Angela, that sounded so affirming and humanistic. We know the practitioners who would do that, but financially we couldn't afford it. So to go through the NHS, through the UK health system where it would be paid for, I'm not putting myself through that.
Right.
You
And
know,
you don't need to.
Yeah.
I thought that's what my experience would be. Like, what the heck are you doing here? The psychiatrist said to me, most middle-aged women who come are in crisis. And
Mhm.
so I thought, well, I'm not in crisis. I was just curious. And that's why I patiently waited, because I was just curious. Again, the more I listened to Angela's podcast and the more I listened to all these other things. But let me ask you both this, because you guys are more ahead in your advocacy, or for sure Kieran is. So by osmosis, you are too, Michelle, I consider. I facilitate support groups for parents whose children are relatively newly diagnosed, relatively younger, usually younger than my son, although there's also parents that are, my son is now 16. And Kieran and I had an extensive talk about this, because the parents that come when they just get diagnosed and they don't know the whole autistic culture. Now, hopefully this is changing now with all of the podcasts that are out there, like the Autistic Culture podcast. But usually it's like shocking, tragic news, like, oh my goodness, what's my life going to be like? And certainly that was my experience, with the added thing that for my son, it was this tragic medical event: seizures, brain inflammation, like severe brain damage deep in the myelin sheath, like those brain cells are gone forever. His brain's going to have to make a workaround for everything. He's progressing, slowly. I recently watched Love on the Spectrum, and I'm seeing all of these young autistic adults, and it was so enlightening for me, because I haven't seen a lot of autistic adults. I've only seen my son's schoolmates, because he's only ever been with autistic kids in schools. When parents come into this parent support group and they think, okay, but they're not like my child. My child needs lots of help all the time. And seeing Love on the Spectrum, I'm like, oh, well, they still do need help. And all of us need help, of course, with things. But they're a lot further along than maybe a lot of people would have expected them to be. And it's almost like looking into the future and seeing the possibilities. And of course, Love on the Spectrum is, a TV show, and they're doing things for ratings, and it may not be the most autistic, neurodiversity affirming thing in all respects, but in some ways I thought it was pretty good in showing reality. So how do you reconcile that when the parents are like, my kid struggles every day to get through every day, and I don't know that they're ever going to get there? And that's why the guy
RFK.
RFK, that's why he's resonating with so many people, because there's parents that say he's speaking for me, and completely not founded in science in any way, but that's why he's resonating, and that's a big problem. So if those parents all understood this other side that you guys do in your advocacy, and I know, we're in the phase of educating everybody and moving towards like action and getting this more, but it's not there yet in the public awareness. Is that a very unclear
I,
question?
I have thoughts, but Michelle, do you want to jump in first?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, there's so much and so much we could dig into, but is one of the things that we have to do. Now, not everyone can do this. So we home educate, which is probably similar to homeschooling in America and Canada. Our kids don't go to school. We educate them at home, which has been seen as a very rebellious thing to do. It's not, it's not the done thing over here. But part of that, I think, then naturally leads into, well, we've taken our kids out of school to educate them ourselves, to help them find a life that works for them in a world that is not built for them, a life that will recognize that even if they are not productive members of society, i.e., they have a full-time, busy job with the hustle that earns them, the average plus salary so they can save into a pension. If they are not successful in that preconceived, very capitalist way of thinking,
yep.
that doesn't matter. Their life has value and their life has so much worth, and they bring so much joy to our life, and they bring so much joy to their friends' life. Most of their friends are online, by the way. They might never meet their friends. So there's this whole flipping, I think, of what autistic identity and culture is, but also what it means to live a successful life. And I think we're trying to show our kids that success doesn't have to mean, it can if it wants to be a career. So our eldest is looking to be a therapist. Am I making some sense? It's trying to flip things, and it is being quite radical.
There's so many aspects and layers of your question. I love my kid. I was trying to do the best thing for my kid. But one of the things that they prescribed for Jesse, and I don't know why, but he wasn't prescribed Adderall. He was prescribed an off-label usage of Lamictal, which is normally an epilepsy seizure drug. But because his anxiety was so bad, that's what they prescribed him. But basically, he was prescribed drugs for ADHD. And he hated them. And I was like, you have to take them, because if you don't take them, how will you get a job? And you could also make $200,000 a year and own a house and have car payments and mortgage payments. How will the bank ever get their money?
We're so conditioned. There's a huge mask across all of society, isn't there? This is what you must do. This is the way and the fear that we can't step out of that. But there's more and more neurodivergent families that are stepping away from that, who are saying, do you know what? If our kids, certainly our youngest, who is autistic and has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos, and today they're 12, and I'm going to get upset. Today, they walk down the stairs for the first time, as in like one foot on one step and then their foot on the next step. Whereas 3 months ago, they learned how to go downstairs, like left foot on the step, right foot on the step. Then they walked down the step. It was like such a proud, like amazing, like moment. But that our youngest, I think, might, and this could change, but at this moment might live with us forever. And part of me is like, oh my God, it's going to be a squeeze in our house. But there's a part of me that's like, what a privilege. Because I'm bringing up these humans that I hope I'll get on with for their whole lives. They'll get on with me. Yes, they'll have friends or partners, but a privilege to think that, we can live together and we would want to live together. And that might look a bit strange. They make sitcoms
but
about,
but
even why?
this,
that's strange.
But even this, in so many cultures and communities, this is so fucking normal.
My dad married like a separate lady, his second wife, and he lived in Cyprus for a long, long time. And you see in and it's maybe not just Cyprus and Greece, maybe in other European countries. So mum and dad have a house, and then if you ever go to Greece, you see all these sort of like
multi-generational
metal wires sticking out, and they're like, why do they never finish the house? It's because they build houses with flat roofs, so it's the oldest child, often the daughter particularly, is getting married and having a family. They build the oldest child a house on top of their house.
What if we moved autistic joy to the front of the line? Then it's not even like a privilege that your kid gets to live with you or a bad thing that your kid gets to live with you. Right.
Joyous thing,
just joy. It's just
okay,
like,
so that is a perfect point to get to the question that I had. Parents who are thinking, okay, so for instance, I could have never ever homeschooled my kid. Like, could I be a good teacher and show him things and have patience with him? Yes, but I wouldn't have the patience to do that for more than 30 minutes here or 30 minutes there. Like, I think I would. And she's laughing because maybe that is what homeschooling is. I don't
that's
know.
what it is, friend.
No, well, it is what it looks like for your family, and we've got a couple of tutors who like are not even tutors. They are Neil and Owen. They're known by their names. And our eldest said, you know, when I get married, our eldest who came out of school, who has just sat some 16 like GCSEs, sat some exams, just a few, and has said to me and his dad, so trigger warning coming up, said to me and his dad very clearly, if he had still been in school, he wouldn't be here to sit his exams. So much school-induced trauma, and yet said, you do know when I get married. So I love that, like, this is the kid who doesn't really see any in-person friends, has online friends, and is now much happier than they were in school, but said, when I get married, something, he's thinking about getting married. It features in his head to have that relationship, which like I hope has come from, you know, seeing me and his dad. We've been together 25 years, but he said to me, I'm doing a diary now, telling the big long story to get to the point. He said, you do know, when I get married, Neil is maths tutor. I'll invite Neil to my wedding. Would he have invited any of the teachers? There's a few good teachers that I can think of. So just amazing that our kids, I think our kids who come out, we have a few tutors, like I said, but a lot of it is they're very self-directed. They don't want to sit to listen to me waffle on about something and try and teach them, because half the time they know, and they'll say to you, oh, well, about this, and I found out about that, and I read this, and I watched that, and I'm like, how do you know? Well, I taught myself.
So that's another aspect of it. Like, my son wouldn't be able to do any of that kind of stuff. Like, cognitively, he's interested in, you know, things that 7-year-olds and under are interested in, and some stuff that's a little bit older, but he wouldn't understand, I'm going to go research this topic and learn about it. Like, okay, I'm catching myself here. I say that, yet there he is on YouTube finding all of his interests of the latest Dogman movie and showing stuff. It might not be
different than
like
you
I'm
think
thinking.
it is.
Yes.
When you say I can't do it, you're picturing some sort of Laura Ingalls one-room schoolhouse where you've got like chalk all over your skirt.
Yeah. And where learning has to look like tick boxes to prove what you've learned.
But aside from me not wanting to homeschool or anything, like other parents, like, I can't take care of my kid forever. I won't have the energy to, I won't have the money to. I want them to be independent, or I like to say autonomous, or have autonomy and agency more than independence. But like, I need to be able to know that if I get sick and die, they're going to be okay. And so many of us parents don't think that our kids could survive without full-time care. And that's the biggest concern.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that is a huge, I forget what the word is for it, but like legacy planning, like figuring out what happens next. Community. Again, like, I feel like I started this point, but didn't really finish it, just in terms of like living with your kids. Most communities for most of history lived in community. If we put joy first, and I want to go back to your other idea, because I just want to complete this circle so people understand it. This idea you have, and you brought it up a couple of times, both of you have talked about it, is like, am I autistic enough to count? What, like, I don't look like the love on the spectrum kid. Okay. All of that is in the context of capitalism. If we put autistic joy first, does it matter if you meet the criteria in the DSM or whatever medical criteria? No. If we put joy first and we put connection and happiness above the ability to generate capital for billionaires, if we put that first, then we're going to say, okay, every single person, doesn't matter what your neurotype is, every single person should know their sensory profile. And every single family should be able to talk about what are sensory needs. And within the 1,000 square feet we share or whatever space we have, how can we do our best job of getting everybody's sensory needs met? How can we put emotional regulation above economic generation? I understand we all have to pay for things and we are living in late stage capitalism. But if we flip the script and we put emotional regulation first for every member of our family, there will be, I firmly believe, more revenue opportunities that appear that might not look traditional or like what we're expecting, because it might not look like going to school or going to work. But doing the work of flipping that script to saying, I'm going to create a low demand lifestyle that works for every member of this family and this community. That's my first goal. And that might mean we reduce expenses. That might mean we start farming and living off of what we can grow and the chicken eggs that we can harvest. Like, that might mean lots of things. But what it will probably mean is we need more community to share resources with. We need mutual aid. And those are the people who are going to take care of your kid, because your kid will be their kid, because your kid will be part of that community. So local community and connection with people that see you fully unmasked, because everyone is sharing the goal of emotional regulation. That, to me, as an individual, is each of our own jobs. Like, I don't think we're going to change RFK or the send resources or the NHS. We're not going to change any of those things, but we can build community for our family. And within that community, every single person's sensory needs and other needs are equally valid. And we go into it saying, how can we get them met? And I'll just share one other quick story about my first marriage. Jesse's father was Indian. And when I went to their house, which was a super small 2-bedroom apartment, that there were 3 kids, a mom and dad and an aunt. So 6 people living in, at the time it was a 2-bedroom apartment. In that 750 square feet, there were so many different ways that they all communicated for their needs to get met. So, like, for instance, there was a porch, and the dad was, I think, maybe his oldest brother, but a couple people in the house ate meat, but almost everyone was vegetarian. And so the meat was always cooked outside on the porch. And that was just what were like smelling meat would have been dysregulating for other people. And when you needed quiet time, nobody had like big headphones. But when you needed quiet time, there was, I don't know why, but a bed in the living room. I have no idea why. And if you laid down or sat down on the bed, everyone knew you were in a timeout. Nobody talked to you. There were no walls. There was no actual, like, the kind of privacy we might want. And yet I watched them make space for 6 people in 750 square feet in some of the most graceful ways. And I think I'm not trying to like privilege certain cultures over others, but I'm just saying, if you have remained in community, it's easier to make those concessions. And for us, we have to learn how to reprogram ourselves to put emotional regulation and joy ahead of ability to raise money.
I've heard similar type of advice, but I know that the 3 of us also have like white privilege, right? Compared to a lot of people that just couldn't ever afford to not have 2 or 3 jobs, or are facing racism every day, or are facing, I can't pretend to relate with that, but I can definitely empathize with how much more difficult it is for a lot of people. And if we all flipped the script to think about that community type thing, and I'm only going to bring this up because you've brought it up many times on your podcast, Angela, that when you were raising your son after you were divorced or whatever, you had a female partner that was platonic, and she had a daughter and you had your son, and you made a family.
We
Like,
raised our kids together, and we're
that
still
is very,
like the four of us are still a family, and we were both, you know, she was many miles from her family, but I was away from my family, and I don't know how I could have been a single mom.
like that's amazing. That's
Too
amazing.
hard.
No, and it's beautiful as well. I sense the fear, and not just, you know, that what happens when I'm not here, what will happen to my kid, and that's what the systems prey on. So
Yeah.
those of us who are trying to do something different, home educate our children, be self-employed, create work for ourselves, and yes, that, you know, that comes with a privilege, and it comes with a fear every month. Like, shit, are we going to actually have enough money to pay our bills this month and feed 3 like growing children who eat a lot of food? But society preys on that fear because it's like, well, what happens when you're not here? You have to get them a job. You have to work harder, Michelle, Kira, and Daria. Because you then have to have the money that when you're not here, you can put them in a paid for facility. And I think that's then where all that horrible RFK stuff comes from. Because unfortunately, if you isolate the severe autism, which obviously I air quotes again, you know, the cure thing, where the parents, well, my children can be cured. They can be a nice normal boy. They can go to work. I can it's fear and control, and I don't know how we get out from under that. And you know, Kieran would, Angela, what you said about living, you know, essentially on a farm and with the chickens, he would move us to a Greek island with no neighbours in a heartbeat. But I do get this. People say to me, "Well, Michelle, what are your kids going to do? How are they going to how are they going to get a job because they haven't gone to school and they're not going to get these exams?" And I'm like, but there's so many different ways to live and be valued. But what society and pushes on, our society pushes on us, is that, you know, no. You've got to get the job. Like you said much more eloquently, and you've got to have the job, you've got to have the house, you've got to have the car, blah, blah, blah. And I just see families who are just too afraid to do anything differently because they don't know there is potentially another way, not an easier way, not a more glamorous way. It's blooming. I think it's blooming.
Right. So here's how we solve the world. We keep educating everybody, like, because it can be, how do we change those fears? You do it by all these podcasts and everything. Because believe me, I was there a few years ago, and now, you know, having understood, oh, I'm autistic too. Oh, there's other ways. Oh, autistic joy is so awesome, and all of that. Of course, it's draining and it's tiring if you have competing sensory things and like that. But the emotional regulation focus, I mean, that's the first capacity in the DIR model as well, is focusing on feeling safe, having your nervous system be calm. How do you use your relationship to calm another person? I saw some clip on Instagram about is it Survivor or some show where there's an autistic girl right now, and they show the guy from the other team hugging her to help her calm down. Yeah,
I know
so
which one you're talking
emotional
about.
regulation and all of that through relationship. So that is how you change the fear, and people are going to take longer amounts of time depending on where they are to get to that mindset. But
in ways to do it, because your way is different than my way, and that's different than everyone. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, the image you sort of quickly pulled up about homeschooling, I don't know where you got that on TV. It's like somewhere that's in your head, that image.
We call it meaning making in floor time. If your kid has one idea of the word you're describing and you're thinking something else, then you're like the double empathy problem, right? Like even within autistics, like I'm thinking homeschool is being a teacher and sitting there for 8 hours and like having to follow a curriculum. And I'm like, I could never do. I would never have the patience.
But that's why when you are ready to share your story, that's why sharing your story and your family story, whatever works for you, like that's not pressuring people to do that. But we need different examples. We have an episode of the Autistic Culture podcast. I don't know if you heard it, but it is on homeschooling, or I think it's called alternative schooling.
I saw it listed in the ones that I haven't listened to yet.
You should listen to that. So that's Christy Garnier, one of was on there with me, and she's a free school mom or unschool mom.
Yeah.
And it looks very different. And it's not to say, and we try and make this point a couple of times on the show, but it's not to say her way is the right way. It's for sure not.
Yeah.
But it was the right way for her family. And what most people think, I know what I thought for those first 10 years I was diagnosed is like, once things calm down, then. And that is not the order of operations. It seems like it is. But once there are fewer doctor's appointments, once we get the will sorted out, once I figure out who's going to take care of the kid after I die, because I could die at any moment, like once and that again is all like, it's the opposite. You have to say, like, what if I said this is enough?
Yeah.
What if I said, like, our joy as a family, as each member of this family is enough? What changes then? And it's not to say you don't have bills, because I know you have bills, but it is what you were saying, Daria, is that mindset shift first of there are other ways to do it. And when we hear people's stories, I think it just like plants a seed that maybe there's like nobody's thinking
opens up.
They're going to meet another woman who's a single mom who's from Serbia, and
because you might hate each other and not get along, whereas you and Mila
can't go look for that.
Yeah.
But once you are like, oh, maybe I don't have to have a marriage that looks like this. Maybe I don't have to, whatever, homeschool in this way. There are more ways to do things. And when we share our stories, that gives other people ideas.
We all share our stories. Everybody starts to get these ideas. And then the people that are the most capable start putting structures in place. Like I know people, I would never take this on myself, even though I've been asked to. People that really, truly want to start alternative schools that are focused on this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And, God bless them.
I have an amazing neurodivergent author I worked with. She has a book called The Micro Schools Handbook. So if you are thinking of starting an alternative school, her name is Marilina Berger, and she helps mostly neurodivergent families put together micro schools that might be for 4 or 5 neurodivergent kids in a pod.
And in 50 years from now, parents won't be having all these fears because they will have all these options available. That's my hope anyway.
We've got a generation of young autistics coming through who I think will be looking for different ways to live and earn and fund whatever, however they want to live their lifestyles. But I think they'll come through with such compassion and empathy to go, okay, well, I've seen how my parents supported me. They took me out of school. They got me a space in a school that met my needs, or, mum helped me get all of the adaptations and support I needed at university. They're going to look and go, well, this is what I had. A lot of them are going to turn around and you look to their peers and say, well, how can I help you? How can I, if you're will some of them set up support homes, residential facilities for their peers? Will they look at the generation coming up below them? Because it's really negative, but I often say to Kieran, I think it's going to get harder. That's not to take away joy, but because as a neurodivergent international community, we've got a voice and we're starting to talk, some people are going to come and stamp down harder on us. And I hate being that negative, but I just think we're at a tipping point, and before things get better, they could get worse. It's a really negative point of view, and I hope I'm proved wrong.
Yeah.
So will our kids go and actually look at what our parents helped us with? What can now we do for the generation coming through? We can build on what's better. We can keep fighting for what's worse. And I do think we're raising a generation of compassionate, autistic young people who will give back, who will take on the legacy and the fight, who will watch what's gone before, and I think will take that on and will make sure that, the kids like our youngest, maybe yours, who wouldn't ever be able to live independently, that they will not be forgotten and they will be supported, and they may become each other's community. And you've highlighted a really valuable point where for us, you know, despite what we do, or particularly what Kieran does, and that profile, even in an international profile, we're a really isolated family. There's 5 of us in our house. We don't really do people. We do have friends, and we have people that we see, but we don't have that wraparound community. And I think that's something that I'll take away and reflect on that, because I can't force people on my kids, because they're like, no, you're not safe, or you don't get me. And I just wonder that those of us who parent and parent well, we don't always get it right, but we're always questioning, and we're always in a bit of a state of flux. Like you said, Angela, it'll get better when, and we're always thinking, and we're always wondering, and did I get today right? Could I do better tomorrow? That went well. Why didn't it go well today? We're constantly questioning and constantly trying to do the best for our kids, and always adapting and always flexing. And that I hope means that, you know, Kieran always says that we do, with our parenting, we do an imperfect job in an imperfect world, but it's absolutely the best that we can. And I hope we just pass some of that on to the kids, and there will be young people who follow through with that, and they'll keep doing the best that they can in an imperfect world, won't they?
And I'll refer people to the Autistic Culture podcast, 10 Pillars of Autistic Culture, because I don't remember which one this may or may not fit into, but a lot of us are perfectionists because we want everything to work out so right that it's hard to be okay with imperfect.
Daria, that's on your episode. That's predictably comforting. So how perfectly that you would.
Lovely.
This is our expectation sensitivity. And it's why when we say we only like this one food or this one shirt, please just give us this one food or this one shirt.
All right. Well, I can't thank you both enough for being here. This is such an awesome discussion. Everybody that listening is at a different learning stage around autism, autistic identity, autistic culture, understanding, and, you know, there's parents, there's practitioners listening, but just lots of things to think about. And I love that glimmer of hope for the future, that there are alternatives to the way society works right now, and hopefully that will come to fruition, and that we can survive that hard stamp down that might come before it gets better. We could talk all day, of course, and hopefully you'll come back on, and we'll have some more guided discussions about topics in the future. Thank you so much, Angela, Dr. Angela Kingdom of the Autistic Culture Podcast, Michelle Rose, who is part of the Autistic Advocate family at theautisticadvocate.com. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you both. Lovely to meet you, Angela. We might see you on a trip to Liverpool soon.
Excellent.
This has been Autistic Moms Chatting, a We Chose Play podcast from affectautism.com, where you can find the show notes for this episode. Thanks for listening. This episode is made possible with the generous financial support of Affect Autism's members and of the International Council on Development and Learning, ICDL.com. Please share this episode on social media, sign up for our newsletter, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram. Find out more at affectautism.com.